Turkish army blames the PKK for a deadly car bomb that left 2 soldiers dead, with Ankara in an offensive against both Kurdish militants and the Islamic State terror group. In a rare televised speech from Damascus, Syrian Bashar al-Assad acknowledges a lack of manpower in his army, but insists his regime will be victorious despite months of setbacks. On the Volta Temple Mount, clashes break out after dozens of Palestinian youth throw stones and fireworks at Israeli police during a Jewish day of mourning.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. 2 Turkish soldiers were killed in a roadside bomb today, apparent retaliation for the country's crackdown on the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. The overall picture for Turkey has become increasingly complex as Ankara launches strikes and carries out arrests on both the PKK and the Islamic State terror group. We'll look at the background behind Turkey's double war, but first, let's see the latest from correspondent Ori Shapira.
After 2 years of ceasefire, Turkey and the Kurds are once again on a collision course. 2 Turkish police officers were killed Sunday in a car bomb in the Kurdish-dominated southeast district of Diyarbakir. Ankara quickly blamed the Kurdish militant group the PKK for the attack. Over the last 3 days, Turkey has become deeply involved on 2 new fronts, as it carried out its first airstrikes against the extremist Islamic group the IS in Syria last Friday and launched airstrikes against PKK militants in northern Iraq. Turkish officials explained their airstrikes aim at creating a safe zone across the Turkish border.
These 3 terrorist organizations have made plans with their bases turned on Turkey. These operations will continue until all of their storehouses of weapons are destroyed.
This shift in Ankara's policy comes after a series of attacks which peaked last Monday when 32 protesters were killed in the suicide bombing in Suruj, an attack linked to the IS that targeted activists who aimed to help the embattled city of Kobani. In response, the PKK killed 2 Turkish police officers on Wednesday, claiming they helped the IS to carry out the deadly attack in Suruj. On Friday, Turkish authorities arrested 590 suspects, members of the IS and the PKK, in raids across the country. During the long battle against the IS, Kurdish forces have gained international support and recognition. But now it seems the balance of forces is changing. On Sunday, the White House backed Turkey's right to strike back at Kurdish militants.
At the same time, the U.S., of course, recognizes the PKK specifically as a terrorist organization. So, again, Turkey has a right to take action related to terrorist targets, and we certainly, again, appreciate their interest in accelerating efforts against ISIL.
Now the Kurds find themselves in a very difficult position, fighting on 3 fronts against the IS, against the Turkish military, and for the sympathy of the public.
And with me right now is journalist Laura Wells in Istanbul. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening. Thank you.
So, Laura, try to explain to me, how did it deteriorate to this situation?
Well, the Kurds for a long time, both in Turkey as well as in Syria, have been accusing the Turkish government of helping terrorist groups such as ISIS fight the Kurds. And when the Suruj massacre happened, they claimed that this is proof that the Turkish government has no intention of protecting its own citizens if they're Kurdish or leftist. And then it just went down from there. On Tuesday, 2 police officers were killed in their homes. PKK had taken responsibility for that. And since Monday, 8 Turkish security forces have been killed and many others have been wounded.
Is there any, let's say, basis for these accusations coming from the PKK towards Turkey?
Well, I think it would be difficult to say that ISIS has directly that Turkey has directly supported ISIS. Although there is a new report in The Guardian today where a U.S. senior official who goes unnamed said that direct dealings between Turkey and ISIS at this point is undeniable after they killed in a special operation Abu Sayyaf. He was an ISIS member who was in charge of oil sales in Syria. They said that they have now thousands of documents and that the relationship between Turkey and ISIS and the sales of the black market oil to Turkey, which could be in the millions at this point, show at least some level of support, even if it's just financial, for oil.
So, Laura, if we're looking forward, it's like if we're looking for the next few days, what should we expect? Because how does it feel right now in the streets of Turkey?
It's pretty tense. There are even neighborhoods in Istanbul who are known to be very leftist and or predominantly Kurdish or Alevi, which is a religion that many Kurds are, which is a minority religion, about 20% of the population, that is a denomination of the Shiite religion. And, you know, there are unnamed gunman attacks almost every day. There are riots. There are protests. There's a lot of confrontation with the police, such as tear gas, rubber bullets. So it's very tense, and especially in the Kurdish majority areas in the east and southeast of Turkey, that's where you're seeing most of the activity. If you go to other towns, especially in the west and in the north, outside of those Istanbul neighborhoods, I think there's a lot of apprehension. Even Turks who despise the ruling, I guess, in a default government at this point, AK Party, they're very, very worried about the PKK because remember, the war between the PKK and the Turkish government has been going on for over 30 years. About 40,000 people have been killed. So they're really worried that this will come back and it will destabilize Turkey. A lot of people are also talking about the effects on the economy, on tourism. Yes. But, you know, when you hear about either police brutality or you hear about gunmen, vigilantes in the streets of Istanbul, this worries nearly everyone.
Yes, Laura Wells, thank you very, very much for this report from you. And right now here with me in the studio is Eliezer Tzafrir, is a former senior official in the Israel Security Agency and Mossad, and also served as an advisor on Arab affairs to the Prime Minister. Good evening. Thank you very much.
Good evening.
So, you know, try to explain to me, because right now with ISIS, with Turkey fighting ISIS, with the Kurds fighting ISIS, that was supposed to bring Turkey and the Kurds like a little bit closer. How come this is tearing them apart again?
It should be. In fact, Turkish behavior is hard to explain. It is mixed also with all the respect, with hypocrisy. First, let's speak about what Turkey is doing lately, last 24 hours, bombarding two aims. One, the ISIS targets, without entering, without Turkish boots on the ground, and bombarding PKK targets, including in northern Iraq, in the region which is called Kandil. This is a region under the control of the KRG.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Turkey was experiencing maybe a little bit of, let's say, decrease in the prestige, especially after the election when the Kurds got into the government or had a good, let's say, result in the elections. And then we're seeing the way that the Kurds are actually managing to fight IS. Is it an ego thing that Turkey wants to show that it has the upper hand on the situation, or is it really the long history, battle, and war between the Kurds and Turkey?
There are elements of long history, because the PKK has been known for many years as a brutal Marxist terror organization, which was doing a lot of headache and much more to Turkish authorities. But since many years, there is a sort of negotiation between Turkish authorities and the PKK, especially since the kidnapping and the arrest of Abdullah Öcalan, the head of the PKK. And they were negotiating even with a sort of a goodwill from Erdogan and Turkish authorities to go and advance a sort of cultural autonomy. But what happened, I don't know, because only lately I was writing an article about saying that the PKK are waiting the continuation of the negotiations. But what happened lately is that the IS was doing this act of terror in Suruj against Kurds, and besides, the Kurds are a part of the Western coalition fighting against it.
Instead of blaming IS, they are blaming the Turkish government, and
one can explain it by that there is a great opposition on side of the Turks to the possibility that there will be, for example, a new Kurdish autonomy in northern Syria.
Mr. Eliezer Tzafrir, thank you very, very much for this.
Thank you.
Yes, and correspondent Ayman Siksik has more on the history of conflict between Turkey and the PKK.
What culminated this week in a massive Turkish airstrike on PKK targets has been brewing within Turkey and close to its borders since the late 1980s. Starting in 1984, the PKK waged an armed struggle against the Turkish state for self-determination for the Kurds in Turkey. According to Turkish sources, up to 2008, the conflict between Turkey and the PKK resulted in over 40,000 deaths, including PKK members, the Turkish military, and civilians. But how did it all begin? Comprising up to 25% of the Turkish population, the Kurds have suffered repression, mainly in education and political representation in the country. A prevailing sense of frustration and anger had prepared the ground for the man who would found the PKK and become its most recognizable leader, Abdullah Öcalan. Fueled by the plight of Kurdish refugees in Iraq, who suffered desolation and danger in 1997 following a brutal quash by Saddam Hussein, Öcalan began what would become a 3-decade-long armed uprising of Kurds. Turkey received widespread international support in labeling the PKK a terrorist organization, and Öcalan, a national symbol for the Kurds, became a sought-after target and fled to Syria to continue heading the party. But in 1998, he was forced to leave his refuge in Syria following Turkish pressure, but was not extradited to Turkey. The following year, Öcalan was captured by the CIA in Kenya and sentenced to death in Turkey for the formation of the PKK armed gangs. In 2002, Kurdish human rights activists succeeded in commuting his sentence to life imprisonment. In 2007, 13 Turkish soldiers were killed in an attack by PKK soldiers along the border with Iraq. It would be only a few days before then Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan would realize international fears and launch an offensive on PKK rebels on Iraqi soil.
We are prepared to face adverse world reaction when we choose to launch an attack against Kurdish rebels in Iraq. The Turkish government will respond to these insurgents.
But the Turkish airstrikes against PKK targets this week may inflame the conflict between the sides once again. A fragile but stable ceasefire had been established between the sides in 2013. The rise of the so-called Islamic State in the region and its imminent threat on Turkish borders has shuffled the cards for the region and branded the PKK again as enemies of Turkish sovereignty. The result may be another violent uprising within Turkey's borders, the like of which the country has not seen in 2 decades.
And we're going to Syria as the spillover from the Syrian civil war continues into Turkey, along with Syria's other neighbors. Syria's President Bashar al-Assad gave a televised address today, giving a glimpse into his current position on the war that has left over 230,000 people dead. Elio Khomburg has the details.
In a rare public appearance, and maybe more than that, an unusual forthright analysis of latest developments, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad delivered his first speech in months, vowing that despite recent territory losses and shortage in manpower, his army will win the ongoing civil war.
We must define the important regions that the armed forces hold on to so it doesn't facilitate the collapse of the rest of the areas. The army is capable. It is capable without effort. We can't even say that it is capable with difficulties. It is capable without an effort.
Despite the current success of the Syrian army, allied with Hezbollah forces, fighting in the strategic border town of Zabadani, Assad's military has absorbed a series of battlefield defeats since March, losing most of the northwestern province of Idlib to an insurgent alliance including the Al-Qaeda-backed Nusra Front and IS, and important areas of the southern region along the border with Jordan to mainstream groups of the Southern Front. Currently, the regime holds on to no more than 25% of the country's territory. Assad, possibly with the advice of his main regional ally Iran, was forced to give up widespread areas in Syria in order to center his efforts on holding more vulnerable areas in the western part of the country.
We are in a fateful period where there is no place for half measures and where hesitation equals defeatism, cowardness, and treason. So there is no waiver of rights, no waste of even 1 inch of land. We will not be slaves but independent masters.
The Syrian president used the opportunity to praise his regional alliances with both Hezbollah, saying the blood between the two allies is mixed with one another, and Iran. Praising Tehran for its recently signed nuclear agreement, he said Iran provides the definitive proof that a nation which sticks to its values and rights must eventually win, emphasizing or maybe reminding the world how strong this regional bond really is.
And right now with me is Avi Melamed, maybe to remind me of how strong Bashar al-Assad is. How strong is he? This situation is just going around and around and just making him stronger and stronger.
No, I think there is a constant process that basically indicates that Bashar al-Assad is getting weaker.
He is getting weaker?
He is getting
How
weaker.
come?
He's getting weaker because of a very simple mathematics, sort of speaking. Majority of the Syrians are Sunnis.
Okay.
So you're talking like 15 million, roughly speaking, Syrians that are Sunnis.
But he is still praising the Iranians. He is praising Hezbollah. He is all but good words. And in this chaotic, let's say, region, he is still stable.
He's still in power. Reminding you, a couple of years ago when the event started in Syria in November and December 2011, there were estimations that Assad is going to fall down in a few weeks, including the Israeli Minister of Defense, Ehud Barak, that time. It didn't happen, but as time goes by, there is a very clear process that both Assad and his allies, the Hezbollah, which basically keeps Assad in power to a large extent, they are getting weaker and weaker. The problem, the major problem of the Iranians in the context of Syria, and we talked about it, is that there is a limit to the capacities of both Hezbollah and Assad in the end of the day. It doesn't matter how much money or equipment or weapons the Iranians will boost in Syria, because there is a limit capacities. You may remember that last Thursday we sat in this studio and I told you, Lucy, my dear, this agreement that signed with the Vienna Agreement may open the road for an agreement in Syria. I think that what we see right now, I want to be very cautious, but I think that what we see right now, exactly today, when Assad is coming out and saying openly, I have problems with manpower. This is a sign, this is a clear sign. There have been recently reports about allegedly Assad recruiting young people, desperately trying to fill in the missing ranks. There have been reports about Assad trying to establish another division of Alawites in the coast area. I think, whole and whole, when we look at the picture in Syria currently, and it's basically a constant process, that in the last couple of months, what we see mostly is accumulating military defeats of Assad and the Hezbollah in Syria. In the south, in the north, they are struggling yet in Zabadani and Kalmun region.
You know, I'm trying to think about, because all this war in the Middle East is basically based on Sunni and Shiite, this war between the different fraction of Islam, until when can he really maintain this, let's say, connection with the Shiite allies that he has? Until when, even if they will bring the money, even if they will give him the help, even if he won't have manpower, until when he can maintain the money on the religion, on the bond, the blood bond?
Interesting question. Look, Assad is not the real question here. In the end of the day, whether he goes or stays, it's not the big question. The big question is basically whether the Iranians will decide it's about time to start negotiating the future of Syria, or whether the Iranians will decide the time is not yet there, meaning they will continue the war. This is the big question. Now, Assad, if you ask me, there are many analysts that basically says Assad is going down. Probably yes. It's not the big issue. In the end of the day, we have to remember, this is the Iranians' interest and the Hezbollah interest to maintain their interest in Syria. Why? Because it's enormously important for the Iranians to make sure that their strongholds in Lebanon, the Hezbollah, offshore or shore the Mediterranean, will be secured and safe. The big question is, for example, is what is going to happen within the Alawites in Syria. Assad is coming from the Alawites. Exactly. By the way, Assad family is one of the Alawites family and not the biggest one. There are bigger families of the Alawites in Syria. The relationship between the Alawites families in Syria have never been kisses and roses, sort of speaking. So let's say that Assad is not the big question here. The big question, of course, in the end of the day, when will the Iranian come to the conclusion that using the military option is becoming less and less productive for them? My feeling, my assessment is that the Iranians are getting closer to this point, understanding that they will have to look for an alternative way to secure their interest in Syria.
And who knows, maybe it was in the nuclear deal, like you said, signing one, signing the other. Avi Malama, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure, Lucy. Thank you so much.
And we're moving to Yemen. In Yemen, forces allied with the Saudi-led coalition continue to battle Houthi militia now for control of the country's largest airbase north of Aden. It's been held by Iran-backed Houthis for months, but the Arab coalition has made gains recently, retaking much of Aden. Its allies have also announced on Twitter the capture of a senior Houthi commander, which has not been verified. A 5-day humanitarian truce is set to start today. And we're going to Iran. Several diplomatic trips have gotten underway since the announcement of a nuclear deal with Iran. One of those, it's underway with Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif on a Mid-East tour. He arrived in Kuwait today ahead of planned visits to Qatar and Iraq, with meetings overall set to focus on improved bilateral, regional, and international cooperation. Already, he's called on Gulf neighbors to cooperate against terror. And to explain to me what does it mean to cooperate against terror is Iranian politics analyst Meir Javed Alfar. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
Really, to cooperate against terror?
Look, Rouhani is doing what not many politicians in Iran have done, and I dare say not many politicians in Israel. He's trying to fulfill his election promises. His first election promise was to find a resolution to the nuclear file in order to remove sanctions. His second promise in 2013, when he was elected, was to improve relations with regional countries. Now, outside of all the countries of the Persian Gulf, the Iranians can't count on the Saudis or the Emiratis because they take a much tougher line against Iran. Kuwait and Qatar take a comparatively softer line towards Tehran. And of course, there's no need to explain Iraq, which is basically very close to the Iranian government. So he's there basically to try to improve relations with the countries that are more sympathetic to Iran, number one. But also the Iranians see that the Kuwaiti and the Qatar Emir were at that summit that Obama convened for the Persian Gulf states in order to tell them that we're going to help you against Iran. So he's going to try to wean them against, lean them off.
What
basically.
are his chances really to win them back, or to actually manage to convince them that Iran is coming in peace and not going after them for regional or religious issues?
If the Middle East file was in the hands of the foreign ministry of Iran, I would say his chances were good. But right now in the Middle East, the file of the Middle East, the relations with a lot of these countries, although the foreign ministry has diplomatic relations, the people who have the security file and in the Middle East is a Revolutionary Guard. And these countries are far more interested in what Iran does in terms of security than what it does diplomatically. And when they see, for example, the Qataris, what Iran is doing in Syria, what Iran is doing in Yemen, of course they'll welcome Mr. Zarif, and he will receive all the welcome he'll receive. But to believe that a new chapter has opened in Iran relations with these countries, I think they'll be much more attentive towards what the Revolutionary Guard does in the Middle East.
Let's try to look, Mayor, at the Israeli perspective on this. Is it likely that Israel will come up in these kind of meetings with the Gulf states, or trying to when they know that Israel and the Gulf states are holding the same line against Iran?
You know, there's a new description that's being used in Iran to describe the alliance between Israel and the Arab countries. It's called the Hebrew-Arabic Alliance. So they see
very similar languages.
Hebrew, yes, both Semitic. So they see that's exactly why he's going to Qatar and Kuwait. They see the Qataris and the Kuwaitis comparatively less sympathetic towards the Saudi position, which is closer to Israel. So they're they're trying to bring to wean them off the Saudis. It's not really going to work, but he's trying to show his people, Mr. Rouhani, that look, I am trying my best. If they don't let me, you know that I tried my best. And this is very important to him because, we have parliamentary elections coming up in Iran in February 2016, and Mr. Rouhani will be up for re-elections in 2017. So it's important to set the scene.
Did you see this diplomatic train going to Iran that fast? Isn't it a little bit just like, taking the robes and just giving them to Iran a little bit too fast?
Well, it's business is business, Lucy. A lot of these countries want to do business with Iran. A lot of these countries were waiting so that the Iranian nuclear file is solved. So on the one hand, Iran is kept away from a nuclear weapon through a 1 year gap in the breakout and inspections. On the other hand, they want to do business, and you never know. Maybe if we would have been in the shoes of France, maybe we would have been sending businessmen to Tehran.
It's like a husband going back to his wife after he divorced her. It's just like, okay, I'm back. Just take me back. Mayor Jaffa, thank you very, very much for this. We're going out for a small break, 2 minutes, and I'll be back for the second part of the news today. Don't go anywhere. The Turkish army blames the PKK for a deadly car bomb that left 2 soldiers dead, with Ankara in an offensive against both Kurdish militants and the Islamic State terror group. In a rare televised speech from Damascus, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad acknowledges a lack of manpower in his army, but insists his regime will be victorious despite months of setback. On the volatile Temple Mount, clashes break out after dozens of Palestinian youth throw stones and fire worse at Israeli police during a Jewish day of mourning. Welcome back to the news today, and we are here in Israel, in Jerusalem. The Temple Mount, or Haram al-Sharif, is constantly one of Jerusalem's most volatile spots. It became so again this morning when mass Palestinian protests hurled rocks, Molotov cocktails, and firecrackers at police officers, with thousands of Jewish worshippers gathered nearby on a day of mourning that marks the destruction of both Jewish temples. Eli Ochenberg has the latest.
After relatively quiet months at the controversial Temple Mount compound in Jerusalem, riots erupted Sunday as dozens of masked Palestinian youths clashed with Israeli security forces. The violence came on the major annual Jewish fast day, mourning the destruction of both Jewish temples, which stood at the site, which Muslims call the noble sanctuary. Israeli security forces were on high alert in advance, expecting hundreds of Jewish worshippers at the Western Wall, which is adjacent to a volatile site. The clashes began after the Palestinian youths barricaded themselves inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque, where they had collected an arsenal of stones, wooden planks, fireworks, and Molotov cocktails. When police approached the northern staircase of the mosque, they were met with a barrage of projectiles, including cement blocks and iron bars. A number of Israeli police officers were lightly wounded after fighting their way into the compound.
The Israeli police in Jerusalem were prepared ahead of time after masked Palestinians inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque threw stones, rocks and boulders at police officers at the Mughramin Gate. Our police units entered inside the Temple Mount area in order to deal with the disturbances and quickly took control of the situation.
The Jordanian government, who acts as the custodian of the holy site, condemned Israel over the unrest, saying it tramples the feelings of Muslim worshippers. In a different incident, a Jewish youth who arrived at the Temple Mount entrance while wearing phylacteries used for Jewish mourning prayers was arrested for disobeying police orders to go back to the checkpoint. For long years, the compound, holy to both Jews and Muslims, has been one of the most tense flashpoint locations in this already sensitive city. As has been proven more than once, a flare-up in the compound has inflamed the entire area.
And with me right now is Senior Middle East Analyst Ali Walker. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
Thank you very much for joining me, Ali. So, you know, these images that we're watching and we're seeing once or twice, maybe a year, are they another sign for, let's say, the next breakout in Jerusalem, or this is just becoming some kind of a routine?
I don't think it's kind of routine, and you're right, Lucy. We see these images from time to time. The difference is that this time there is a whole Palestinian public opinion that is well convinced that this government would be, its approach would be different regarding to the status quo in the Al-Aqsa and Haram al-Sharif, and that this government is open to the appeals that come from the extreme right wing in Israel to change the status quo, to allow Jews to pray, not only to visit. We saw how the policemen here rushed to stop a Jewish worshipper that started praying in the Haram al-Sharif, which means a unilateral step from the Israeli side or the Israeli authorities to allow the partisans of the Temple Mount to change the status quo. And
just Ali, correct me if I'm wrong, just a few, I think, weeks ago, there was some kind of an understanding between, or some kind of a will to reach an understanding that Jewish worshippers and non-Muslim worshippers will be able to go on Temple Mount with Jordan and Israel and the Palestinian authorities. What happened to this
understanding? Is not new, Lucy, and visitors are allowed to go twice a week into the Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif. They are not allowed to pray because, according to this understanding, to this status quo, this is a place for Muslims, only for Muslims to pray. Now, because we have many approaches about whose is this site, etc., etc., there was this understanding between the Jordanian and the Palestinian Authority from one side and from the Israeli side to allow visitors, Christians and Jews and everyone, to visit the Temple Mount under one condition, that this will be a visit that will not be used for prayer. That will not be used to express any kind of another religion that might have any approach in the Temple Mount. But Lucy, when you talk to Palestinians, they say in the Israeli government that there are ministers who are ready to change the status quo. There are ministers who participated in events of the partisans of the Temple Mount, which mean that Al-Aqsa, and when we know that Hamas is using and Hamas is fueling the situation in Jerusalem in general and in the Temple Mount specifically, we received this very explosive cocktail.
It's amazing that the only person that is maintaining the status quo is Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. Ali Wakan, thank you very much for this. While addressing Kenya's in Nairobi, American President Barack Obama said the country is at a crossroad, facing peril but also enormous promise. Today he arrived in Ethiopia, an important but controversial American ally in the region. Correspondent Shahal Peled follows the presidential journey in Africa.
Having concluded his two-day visit to Kenya, U.S. President Barack Obama traveled to neighboring Ethiopia to become the first sitting American president to do so. Although a strategic security ally and a focus of investment for the U.S., Ethiopia is also known for its abuse of political and democratic freedoms.
What we need to do is just look through the series of reports by the State Department of the United States, which highlight numerous cases of human rights violation, torture, even killings.
Obama's trip to Ethiopia, a nation brought to its knees by a communist dictatorship in the 1970s and war and famine in the 1980s, isn't the only matter of controversy. While visiting Kenya, the president angered locals when he told the country, which outlaws homosexuality, that discriminating against gays was like treating people differently because of race.
Obama could be considering from another different perspective, maybe from a secular point of view. But for us, we are talking on a Christian point of view.
Obama addressed Kenya's most sensitive issues, including sexual assault, domestic violence and genital mutilation, highlighting the importance of educating and employing women. But he also focused his message on helping Kenyans to thrive and warning that corruption must be tackled.
I'm here as a friend who wants Kenya to succeed. And the pillars of that success are clear. Strong democratic governance, development that provides opportunity for all people and not just some, a sense of national identity that rejects conflict for a future of peace and reconciliation.
Despite excitement that preceded his visits, voices of disappointment and discouragement overshadowed the presidential trip, which marks perhaps a final attempt by the first African-American president to shore up his legacy on the African continent.
And now let's go to the United States, still with Barack Obama, but totally different, and to the American presidential race and news that may be surprising from some. For some, the latest CNN ORC poll shows most Republican voters want Donald Trump to remain in the race. With his provocative tactics and statements, perhaps not surprisingly, he is also the candidate voters most want to see in a presidential debate. 22% say they think Trump will eventually win the GOP nomination. Unbelievable. To understand why is it. How come? Danny Ayalon is a former Israeli deputy foreign minister and former ambassador to the United States. Is here with me.
Hi, Lucy. Good evening.
How come? How come? Because this is amazing. Because last week, the polls showed really that he is going up. And it was before what he said about McCain. Right after what he's saying about McCain, he's still going up. How come?
I'll tell you, the one question is name recognition. He is the most well-known. All the others, who knows about one senator from Florida or another governor from Louisiana or from Wisconsin? Right now at the race, maybe Jeb Bush is well-known. And it's Donald Trump, and he's the most colorful. He's the most provocative, as you mentioned. He is the most. He's a loose cannon. But I think at the end of the day, once they really get into the state-by-state primaries, I think he will slide because.
I'm trying to understand because Americans sometimes when you're going to the United States, you know what I'm talking about. There is this, you have to be politically correct. Even sometimes you have to be a little bit hypocrite and to smile all the time, to say how the world is shiny and beautiful, although you are miserable. But you know, if we're looking at it, he is the complete opposite of what the Americans are representing. So how come they like him and love him so much?
I think it's because there is no one charismatic candidate on the Republican side. So when there is no one that can really step up to the plate and showing some vision and showing leadership, they go to him. They know him. He's an interesting guy. He is a funny guy. So people relate to him. But at the end of the day, I believe that there will be some reckoning. And on a state by state, we will see that he will be sliding unless the Republicans want to commit a political suicide. Because if he runs against Hillary, there is no chance he can win.
And for now, we're saying that almost every week now, but for now, he is really helping Hillary Clinton.
Absolutely.
Once he helped her with her race and with money, the Clintons, and now he's actually helping her to go ahead.
Absolutely, because he brings all the candidates down to stoop to a very low level, to have all these fights. Some of these fights are very ugly, like with John McCain. So this really, I think, at the end of the day, makes the Republican Party look not very good, and the Democrats show more unity, show more vision with Hillary. If they go this way, continuing, I think it's very bad for them.
I'm trying to take this guy as serious as we can, but really, I'm trying to make, can you imagine as really, you know, you are a professional, you're a diplomat, you saw a lot of things. Can you imagine a meeting with this guy actually sitting and talking about Iran, talking about security, talking about defense with somebody like Donald Trump?
Very hard to imagine, because mostly he talks about himself. He's very egotistical. You know, he is really showing off with his money. By the way, according to all the experts, he also bluffing about his money. He says he's worth 9 or 10 billion. Some say he's not worth more than $500 million. You know, just 1/10 of what he's showing. He's talking very badly about minorities. He's talking very badly about the other candidates. I did not see any good word that he has about anybody. So that's not a good platform to run on.
I think that this is, you just said everything that the world needs. Danny Ayalon, thank you very, very much for this.
Thank you.
Okay, now to Ukraine. American and Ukrainian troops are in the midst of large-scale drills near the country's Polish border in a show of unity in the face of a still defiant Kremlin. The annual exercise involves 1,800 soldiers from 18 countries, and this time are happening amid a conflict in the region that has claimed over 6,500 lives. On Friday, the State Department announced U.S. troops would begin training Ukraine's military forces later this year, part of U.S. efforts to strengthen the country's security vis-a-vis Russia. And to understand a little bit more about what is happening right now in Kiev is Vladimir Solohov in Kiev with me right now. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
So, Vladimir, can you feel the American power on Kiev's land yet or not?
Well, definitely we don't see American soldiers marching through Kyiv at this point right now. But yes, the Americans are on the ground. They're mostly trying to keep to the western part of Ukraine, where there is a very big military training field. This is basically the largest military training field in all Central and Eastern Europe. That's near the western Ukrainian town of Lviv. And the American troops have been already training, but not the Ukrainian army, but the National Guard troops on that field as part of Fearless Guardian training program. It started around April and it will finish around October, and they plan to train approximately 600 Ukrainian National Guard troops. But as you correctly said in earlier, there also now the talks are going about American military training Ukrainian army, which is different from the National Guard.
Vladimir, from your point of view and from what you're saying, do you think that it's a smart move to go and maybe, or to receive help from the United States when we know that behind the scenes maybe the help that the United States is giving Kiev, it's because it wants to maybe anger or get back to Russia, at Russia?
Well, this is a yes and no question. Obviously, the presence of American soldiers on the Ukrainian soil, some 500 or 600 kilometers from the Russian border, doesn't fly good with Russia and with Moscow. But at the same time, and all the parties realize that. But at the same time, we have there are various reports confirmed by NATO that Russian troops are already on the ground of Ukrainian soil on the Ukrainian territory. But at the same time, there is this support which Ukraine is looking for from its Western allies, from its Western partners, and obviously nobody is talking right now about providing Ukraine with weapons. But the Western partners, such as U.S., Canada, and some other countries, they're willing to provide trainers to train Ukrainian military, to train Ukrainian military medics. And by the way, one of them is Israel. I talked to the Israeli ambassador here in Kyiv a month ago, and the Israeli government is planning to send medical trainers to train Ukrainian military medics.
Oh, this is a very interesting piece of information.
So we're also getting, we hope to get some help from Israel as well.
Yes, definitely. Vladimir Solov, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Hundreds of people attended the funeral of Sandra Bland this weekend, a black woman found dead in a Texas jail cell days after she was arrested for a minor traffic stop. Annie Schatzberg has more on the latest in a series of incidents this year drawing attention to police brutality towards minorities.
Hundreds of people gathered in Illinois on Saturday to mourn a life cut tragically short. It's been nearly 2 weeks since Sandra Bland died in a Texas prison, but questions surrounding her death are far from disappearing. Sandra Bland was taken into custody on July 10th after being pulled over by a Texas state trooper for failing to use her turn signal. She was charged with assaulting a public servant. Bland died in her jail cell 3 days later. Dashcam footage from the arrest indicates the officer used excessive force.
And then I will light you up. Get out! Wow. Now! Wow. Get out of the car! Really, for a failure to signal. You're doing all of this for Get over there!
State officials and the FBI are continuing to investigate what really happened in a traffic violation that escalated into an arrest.
First and foremost, as relates to the traffic stop, we have certain procedures in place, and he did not comply with those procedures.
Sandra was found hanging in her jail cell with a plastic trash bag around her neck. After family and friends challenged the explanation, arguing Sandra was not emotionally unstable, an autopsy report concluded her death was in fact suicide. They also found 25 to 30 linear wounds on her left forearm, believed to be self-inflicted from weeks prior to her death. The trooper has been placed on desk duty for violating protocol. The jail is also being cited for not carrying out sufficient periodic checks on its inmates.
Here in Texas, we are not afraid of ISIS, we're afraid of the police. And we need immediate intervention, and the Department of Justice has to come.
After a year of highly publicized deaths at the hands of law enforcement officers in the U.S., activists claim Sandra Bland's death is the latest example of police brutality and racial prejudice.
And right now with me is Dr. Alex Coleman, value creation expert at the Academic College of Tel Aviv. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me. And we are here to talk about a big setback to Teva company, of course, pharmaceutical company.
Yes. Well, the thing is that when you invest in a company, all you care about is how fast it grows. Now, when it's a small company like a pizzeria, if it opens another branch, it doubles its size. But when it's a billion-dollar company, it cannot grow as fast as you want it to grow.
Of course.
So its only way is like dinosaurs to swallow other dinosaurs. And so Teva wanted to swallow Milan, but apparently Milan is fighting fiercely against its acquisition in ways that I consider to be
unfair to the investors, because if you as an investor, if the stock is trading for say $40 and I offer you 45, it's up to you to decide if you want to sell or not. But what Milan's management is doing, they are diluting the stock so that they hold, or a Dutch, it's a very intricate salad to prevent Teva from buying it.
Who is, of course, it's a win-lose situation. Who is winning, who is losing from this situation?
Well, it seems that Teva will not succeed right now. If I were to bet, it would not succeed to swallow Milan. So now it wants to buy another company, an Irish company called Allergan, which only the generic drugs. In drugs, you have two types of drug. You have innovative, like Viagra. Okay, so I invent a new drug and I make a lot of money. And after a while, my patent expires, and so it becomes generic. And Teva is the world's largest generic company, and it wants to have more and more generic drugs, particularly in the area of allergy. I mean, the world population is aging, and so Teva is betting on diseases that inflict older people.
Okay.
So part of them is investing in drugs that help you in cases of Parkinson's and diseases such as that. And this part is an investment to have some allergies because people are becoming more and more allergic. So
what are the chances, actually, that this deal will go?
Good chances. And Teva is a company that knows how to swallow and digest other companies.
Like you swallow and digest all the pills that we're buying from Teva.
Sure.
Dr. Alex Cohen, thank you very much. I'll swallow and digest it. Thank you very much, Dr. Cohen. And now moving to sports. Despite a wave of FIFA corruption scandals, football's governing body passed a resolution assuring the full support of the 2018 World Cup in Russia. Michael Friedman has more on the recent qualifying draw.
The road to the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia has been laid out for 141 teams from across the globe. The qualifying draw took place in St. Petersburg on Saturday, with Russian President Vladimir Putin kicking off the proceedings. And outgoing FIFA President Sepp Blatter expressed enthusiasm about the tournament.
We are looking forward to an exciting World Cup for the game, for the world, for Russia.
A global audience of approximately 94.8 million tuned in to watch the live draw, and those in the football world were to their seats waiting to learn who they would face in the coming World Cup qualifiers. With some dramatic matchups, Group A features heavyweights Netherlands, France, and Sweden in one of the most difficult draws, and one of those teams will not make it to the World Cup. French manager Didier Deschamps knows what challenges lie ahead for the Blues.
It is quite a strong group with the Netherlands and Sweden, which are among very good European nations. To be in a group like that leaves us in many possible outcomes, but qualifying stages are always difficult.
Another pivotal matchup comes in Group F, which pits England against Scotland, a battle for football supremacy that began in 1872.
But the Scotland fixtures are one, I suppose, that certainly for the British mass media, that stand out because it's such an old rivalry. It's the oldest rivalry, I believe, amongst footballing nations.
European powers Italy and Spain were also drawn together, providing the respective 2006 and 2010 World Cup champions with a challenging route to Russia. The 2018 World Cup qualifiers will begin in September 2016 and run through November 2017. And each country will hope to join host Russia, who automatically qualified in the most coveted football tournament on the planet. Despite all the excitement over the draw, there is once again a dark cloud over the controversy surrounding Sepp Blatter and the ongoing FIFA investigation.
With me right now is the I-24 News Sports Magazine anchor, Jonathan Varga.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi.
All good.
All good. Yourself?
All good. Very good.
I always laugh first. Why?
Because you cannot. You cannot.
Yes. Such a kid.
You're such a kid.
Yes.
6 years old. But all men are 6 years old.
Yeah, true. Which makes me a man. I'm a man. Because I'm infantile.
So, let's talk about the Tour de France.
Tour de France is ending today. The Brits are dominating France for the second time in 3 years. Chris Froome is winning the Tour de France. It's the third time in 4 years that a Brit, in the last 4 years, that a Brit is winning the coveted trophy. The Tour de France trophy will cross the channel to England. Chris Froome, an incredible performance. We're seeing him here. This is when he won the Alpe d'Huez, the biggest ascent, the biggest climb in the Tour. That happened yesterday. And today, in a rainy day in Paris, it's perhaps not the finale that people were hoping for, but
still some sun out there.
Yes, that was yesterday. And then today, the going into Champs-Élysées, it was rainy, but Chris Froome won it, and rightfully so. Second time in 3 years, a big victory for the British cyclist.
Nice. And you brought me also the best goal ever.
Yes, the season will only start, the European season will only start in 2 weeks, at least in England, in Italy a bit later. Look at the goal from a warm-up match in China. This is between Milan and Inter, the Milan derby. Boom! Boom! Philippe Mexes, that's his name. It may be the goal of the season. Insane, beautiful volley. If this is what happens when they go to warm-up matches, just
this is beautiful.
Insane. And you know, scoring it in a Milan derby.
Everyone are in shock.
Yes, and it's true. It's a warm-up match, but every time you face UCI rivals, you want to do something like this. So this guy has done it. Insane.
I'm in shock.
Yes.
It's like
that's because
beautiful.
You're such a big football fan.
Of course.
I know. You love Milan. Forza Milan!
Forza Milan!
Forza Milan, yes!
Forza.
This insane, beautiful goal, one of the candidates for the goal of the season when the season has not even begun yet.
And you brought also crazy surfing people.
Yes, remember last week we saw that incident with the shark. We said maybe surfers now will be a bit more careful. So look at what Jamie O'Brien did. He was surfing and he set himself on fire while surfing for the waves to put the fire off. This is what the guy did.
What?
Insane.
It's why?
So he said, you know what? This guy fought off sharks. I will do something even crazier. I will set myself on fire and see if I survive.
It's like...
He did, by the way.
It's just like...
Yes. When you say no words, I'm speechless. This is what is happening right now.
What?
And rightfully so. What were you What were you thinking about? What were you thinking about?
Well, it's the sea after all. What was he thinking? That it's not going to burn?
It worked.
Like
it worked, by the way. He's fine.
Of course it's fine. He was at the sea and it's like, okay.
Yes, I understand.
Jonathan Reagan, crazy surfer guy like you.
Yes, of course. Crazy guy am I.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
Yes, and that's it. We're going out for an update from the news desk, and then we will be back for the third part of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Update, news desk, and then we will be back. Welcome back to the news today. Full House, the series we all grew up on, at least most of us, telling the story of a single father struggling to raise his 3 young daughters after their mother died, is making a comeback on screen. These blasts from the past taking over TV and cinema, making us all think, is Hollywood yearning for the past, or is it just all out of ideas? With me now are 2 of my favorite correspondents. Ayman Siksa, good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
And also Shahab Pellas, good evening.
Good evening.
So, Hollywood is becoming bored of its own materials that it's producing in the last few years, or is it just like all of us looking at the past and saying, oh, I remember this, oh, I want this?
There's nothing like nostalgia. Well, I think that reboots and revivals have been around for a long time, but it seems that this year they've gotten out of hand. From David Lynch announcing that he's back with Twin Peaks, to X-Files coming back in January 2016. Somehow they find the time for Gillian Anderson, David Duchovny, and of course Full House will be back in 2016 as well, and they're popping up new photos every day from the set, and fans are going berserk,
and Beverly Hills and
everything around it. There seems to be a lot of these coming around, but I'm not sure it's that bad a thing. They do bring and promote back these very classic television series, and they're putting a touch of change and originality to them, and fans have been waiting for this a long time. You ask fans of Seinfeld and Friends, they'll tell you that this is all they've been dreaming about. So it's true that where are all the original ideas, but also there is some kind of look back, a nostalgic look back that brings us the fondness of emotions that we've all been waiting for. And TV has never been better. We have to say that there's always new series and shows around which are wonderful.
I'm thinking about it. Is it like us, like getting just it's enough with trash TV? We don't stand anymore seeing the Kardashians and people, instead of actually seeing a series on a single father that is raising his kids. But we're seeing a reality show about a single father who's raising his kids after their mother died, and we're seeing it like we're seeing in Hebrew kishke. It's like we're getting into the kishke of everyone in a reality TV. Maybe we don't need reality TV anymore.
Well, we all idealize the shows that we used to love in the past. There's Fame, there's The Muppet Show that's also making a comeback next year. That's a crazy idea anyway. And The Muppet Show has been revived before in 1996. Now it's being revived again.
They're the only one who won't age, so we see them as they were in the 90s.
But I think what's happening is, like Shachar said, there's plenty of really good original television in the past few years, especially on American television. And this is kind of a reverse trend. We're seeing, after years of shows that deal with sex, like Sex and the City, and the Mafia, like The Sopranos, and other really heavy topics like plastic surgery on Nip Tuck, now people seem ready for, okay, show me something naive like Full House. Show me that naivete, that nostalgia of something simpler to just give yourself to, and remember yourself also young. That's the really enticing part about nostalgia. You remember yourself and you want to share it with a new generation.
You know what does it say? It says to our viewers our age. And yes, we are a young channel with, yes, young people who are working in it. But, you know, I'm trying to think if you can, you know, rebuild the past. You can reboot the past. Because like X-Files, if we will think about it, it was a series that talked, a drama that talked about aliens. And of course, today still people are looking for aliens. But is it something that we can, when we like look at it today and we will say, what? This is not, come on.
It might be, but since it's based on such a strong emotion of connection to the past, that people might find it embarrassing, but others might find it that they are very much emotionally connected to it. But it's very similar television to what is happening in Hollywood. They keep out dragging out Captain Jack Sparrow and Spider-Man because there's a built-in audience that would go and connect and see it. And if we take a look at only this summer, in Hollywood, we've seen Jurassic Park, Terminator, Mad Max. It's the entire 80s and 90s coming back. And all of these new films, old new films, have very divided audiences. Mad Max was critically acclaimed, but not so well in the box office. Jurassic World, on the other hand, was very successful, and Terminator was very bad at both ends, but it very much changes.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the actors, because, you know, the actors were a really big part of each and every let's say nostalgic film or comedy that or drama that we used to see. And you know, if I'm watching right now Mulder and Scully, the actors, and I'm watching it right now, I'm saying, oh my God, they didn't act really good. And today you're watching it, although for that time it was amazing.
And today they are evolved. Both actors are very much better.
So how can you know, I don't know, or on the other hand, if we will see the set, the actors that are playing in Full House, you know, they've been successful only because it's Full House. We remember the twins, Olsen twins, because of Full House. We remember...
well, not coming back, by the way, sadly. So Uncle Jesse.
Uncle Jesse.
John Stamos.
Yes, because of Full House. So can they really move, or is it just for them going back to the past and trying to, you know, just bring back their success again?
Well, it will be an interesting experiment, especially with the X-Files, because Aliens, after the X-Files, became a boring, not so in-touch subject. No one really cares about it anymore, but this goes to say about the changing nature of television. Aliens now are hot again because there have been so many discoveries in space, even in the last few weeks, that now it's a hot topic again. And there's this conspiracy theory going on that maybe the American government is hiding information about aliens Palestinians, it's once again a hot topic. But especially with Gillian Anderson in this show, she did so many amazing films afterwards, so many amazing series. She was such an accomplished actress. It will be difficult to see her in this part again.
Unlike, for example, David Schwimmer from Friends, that he will always be Ross
Geller. Absolutely. And that's why, on a personal note, I have to say that I'm slightly sad for these actors. And when I see these characters being revived, you know, Uncle Jesse, seeing John Stamos 20-something years later, it's kind of sad seeing him go back. It's like a step back, and that's why I think
John Stamos is a really good actor.
Yes, and still, when I take the film's example for us to look at, then I'm sad for Arnold Schwarzenegger when I see him in Terminator being aged and still playing the same character. But when I look at Mad Max, for example, which was a success, then other than the title, everything has changed and it's very much original. They have the same title character, but it's a different actor. It's not Mel Gibson anymore, thankfully, and it's a completely different story, which is very much connected to the visual effects we have today and the storylines we like today.
Well, that gives us an inside look on the hierarchy of actors within Hollywood and within the US. Some actors can't break the part that they're identified with, and they're happy to go back and playing it, even if they are really good actors like John Stamos. Can you remember anything John Stamos did after Full House?
Except his appearance in Friends, where
there you go.
Capitalizing
on the success of a different show. So I think there are actors who this would be good for. I'm not sure the audience would be as happy to see him again playing the uncle of a few happy, cute twins on the show.
But Tom Cruise is actually a wonderful example. Now Mission Impossible is back, Rogue Nation Mission Impossible, and it's great. It's 96% in Rotten Tomatoes. It's having such a great success. Even before it's released, there's this incredible video of Tom Cruise hanging outside of a plane, and reportedly, and according to the video, he did this himself.
Amazing,
this is incredible
to see. Like really, Tom Cruise is sometimes I'm looking at him. It's like he's not humane.
He's not a good example.
Not aging.
But this is still heading for a success, and you know, it's Tom Cruise reprising the role of Ethan Hunt. It's back again into this plot line of James Bond-like Mission Impossible, and still it seems like, at least ahead of its release, that built-in audiences once again.
You something. Like, for example, if we would like a new Friends or Seinfeld, do you really think that the success that they had in the 90s will be again in 2016, 2017?
I think with comedies, it's going to be much more difficult. There's a certain chemistry between the cast members of a certain comedy performance, not to say that it was some kind of a show that today we don't see anymore. But in drama, there might be a chance.
Sitcoms are dying. The last successful sitcom that we've seen is The Big Bang Theory. That's the only one that's really taken huge audiences. Sitcoms are a dying genre. It's all about drama right now. So that's where you have to go.
Revive.
So this is why I stick with Friends. For me,
the
it's
reruns,
Friends.
though.
The reruns, of course. Now that it's in HD and everything is good, so it's perfect for me. Don't ask me like sentences from Friends. It will be pathetic. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Really, really fun conversation. And we're staying somewhere. It's an event that created a lot of buzz among local churches and Christian groups. One that promises to be the largest public satanic ceremony in history in Detroit. Yes, satanic. But as ABC News reporter Jane Park reports, the group behind it took great effort to make it a private exclusive party.
The lines ran along the graffitied walls, at least 100 people eagerly waiting for what's been kept well under wraps.
It said dress like an animal or wear horns and tails.
Some drove in from as far as upstate New York to see the Satanic Temple unveil a 9-foot-tall bronze statue of a goat-headed Satan.
It just seemed like it would be a historic event.
The guests came dressed to impress. Each paid at least $25 for a ticket. Security inside was tight. No cameras or media allowed in. No cell phones and photographs allowed. The secretive nature of the event didn't prevent a few protesters from attending.
We figured, well, if they're going to unveil a statue and show a statue, well, well, we're going to show the statue that beat this statue behind the scenes in reality. That's, recounted in the St. John's Apocalypse that St. Michael and his angels defeated Lucifer and his angels.
Members of the Satanic Temple, who say they stand for the separation of church and state, kept mum Saturday night, focused instead on showing their guests a good time. Some came out of curiosity, others just to appreciate the art. And they say don't knock it just because it's not your taste.
A sculpture or a piece of art or a tribute to something that they don't understand is not necessarily going to impact their religion or their beliefs.
There was so much buzz about the night, Detroit police set up outside just to make sure the Satanists and the naysayers stayed civil.
We support anyone's First Amendment right to practice whatever religion they want or to come out and protest against that, their freedom of speech. So, we're there basically to protect the rights of everyone involved.
In the end, the group made good on its promise to make this an exclusive event. Guests patient enough to make it through the line were promptly sent out the back door where outsiders can only imagine the real party awaits.
Okay, normal, really normal, and still with me here is Shachar Pellet to talk about normal things.
Absolutely not.
People
I'm good to see
worship
that.
Satan.
I'm good to see that. We are talking about women today, and females on TV and film are on a rise. We're starting with the rise and rise of Amy Schumer, also known as that woman who talks about her vagina all the time on television. These have been the last couple of years have been the Amy Schumer years. She has this very, very fresh, unique comic voice, unembarrassed, non-apologetic. She has very bold skits about urinary problems and women masturbation, and it's all out there. She has 3 very successful seasons behind her of the Inside Amy Schumer show, which is now actually including an Emmy nomination of her as Best Actress, which is unprecedented as a skit actress to be nominated. She has her own new film now, Trainwreck, where she portrays probably herself, I think, but this is already quite a success of $50 million in the box office, and she's definitely on a roll. She's actually was offered the seat of Jon Stewart for The Daily Show.
I cannot believe that they didn't give it to her.
Well, no, actually she turned it down. Very, very
really?
Upsetting for us, but this is what she said. She said, I have never done anything safe or to make money for that reason, so, I said I can't start now. So she's staying very funny and true to herself, and I say good for her, and we'll, of course, continue to follow her and her great, great career. And women were strong this year, not only on television, but in film as well, and especially gay women. Rooney Mara, Julianne Moore, Cate Blanchett, and Ellen Page all might be nominated this year for Best Actress for portraying gay women.
Really?
We've seen very few gay couples of women in Hollywood. There was a 2010 film called The Kids Are All Right, also starring Julianne Moore, but Hollywood had focused mainly on men gay couples, from Some Like It Hot and The Bird's Cage to Milk and Brokeback Mountain. These are all gay men couples, and now this year not 1 but 2 films are about gay women couples, starting with Carol, which premiered in Cannes, a 50s drama about an unusual romance between 2 women starring Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara. This is was very much hailed by critics in Cannes, and this is something everyone is looking forward to see when you focus on gay relationships in the 20th century. And Freeheld, whose emotional trailer was released over this weekend, it tells the true story of Laurel Hester and Stacey Andry, a couple who fought for their legal rights as a gay couple once Laurel found out that she is diagnosed with cancer, and as opposed to regular straight married couples, couldn't work legally with her spouse. And we know in recent years Hollywood loves transgenders and gays, and Jared Leto winning for Dallas Buyers Club is a great example. So we're looking forward to see them on the red carpet.
And we are looking forward to see who's going to win the Oscars.
There's time, but we'll wait.
Yes, Shachar Pellet, thank you very much
you.
for this. That's it for tonight. From the Jaffa Port, Israel, have peace, have angels, not Satans and stuff. Good night.